Gentlemen, the moment has arrived. We have our Champions League round of 16 draw. Joining me are Julien Lawrence, of course, who's world famous from the Gab and Jules show, I'm told. And of course, ESPN senior writer, the ESPN senior writer, Mark Ogden. Let's get right into it, guys. Just as UEFA were very quick with the draw this time, no mucking about, no endless speeches. Arsenal leading us off here. They got drawn against Bayer Leverkusen. On paper, Mark, are you just going to say, all right, Bayer Leverkusen can't be good because Xabi Alonso's not there and Kasper Hjulmand's not good?
No, but it's definitely the tie that Arsenal would have wanted, isn't it? I mean, they'd rather have faced Bayer Leverkusen in this side of the draw because I think it's a very imbalanced draw. So they'll be happier to take this than Atalanta. I think Atalanta are more dangerous. So Bayer Leverkusen for Arsenal is a good tie. And as we're going to discuss it in a few moments, how they're in the blue path, which is a much easier path to the final in Budapest if they want to go all the way.
Sporting fans, by the way, thank you for that massive show of support when you were already saying that they're going to play Bodo Glimt in the next round. Jules, your take, obviously this is a much changed, not just the manager, and of course they had our friend Erik ten Hag in between as well. This is not going to look like last season's Bayer Leverkusen.
No, you're right. Change of managers. They lost their key players, the best players as well. Pretty much the whole spine of the team has gone. They've got loads of young players, and Hjulmand is doing a decent job. They're sixth in the Bundesliga. They're a bit up and down since the turn of the year. Really, we've seen them imploding at times in the league this season. but they play with intensity. They have their wing backs. They can be quite clinical at times. Grimaldo and Maza and players like that. But I think you two are right. Arsenal have to be the favourite, especially with the second leg at the Emirates. And of the two, between them and Atalanta, that's probably the draw that they wanted as well. I think Atalanta are probably a more dangerous team overall. So, yeah, I think Mikel Arteta will be very happy.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you guys. Obviously, when I ask myself what is the path for Leverkusen here, it's maybe a distracted Arsenal or an Arsenal that I'm thinking of the Brentford game that just doesn't perform on the night, coupled with maybe a Alejandro Grimaldo set piece. He's obviously has that in his locker. But we are, or maybe a defensive error. We've seen some of those from Arsenal, not many, to be fair. But yeah, I think it's very, very slim margins for Bayer Leverkusen. Bodo Glimt, talk about contrast in styles, right? Sporting know how to be tough and defensive when they need to be. Bodo Glimt, much more, I want to say risk takers. I don't know if that's the right word. They certainly maximize their talents. And of course, we'll just get this out of the way. The plastic pitch north of the Arctic Circle, weather will still be rubbish, presumably in March. And of course, these ties are going to be played March 10th and 11th and March 17th and 18th. Jules, is that how you see it? Do Sporting need to approach this as if, like, say, the way they approach Paris Saint-Germain, who of course they beat in this competition, or can they say, you know what, let's go and out football Bodo?
I think it's a 50-50 tie, this one. I think it's a really exciting one because it's two teams that can play really good football. We saw that with Sporting. Okay, there's some games where they sat back and hit you on the counter, but they can also have a lot of the ball like they do in the domestic league, exactly like Bodo Glimt do in the domestic league as well. So I think it's a case of let's try to have the ball more than the opposition, and both of them will play and both of them will try to outplay the opponent. In one way, I think the first leg being in Norway on that plastic pitch is a big advantage. Sometimes we say, second leg at home is better. In this case, I think it's so good to start for Bodo Glimt at home because they'll have that plastic pitch. It will give them an advantage, no doubt. And they can take that then to Lisbon and to Portugal and see what happens in that second leg. And for Sporting, the second leg at home is obviously, as always, good news for them and better. But I think it's 50-50, this one, really, and difficult to call.
All right, let's move on to the bottom half of the blue half of the draw. Atletico Madrid against Tottenham Hotspur. Jules, let's start with you.
If you're Diego Simeone, if you're anybody really right now, you'd be happy to play against this Tottenham side. We saw them
Europa League champions, Jules.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's hard to believe they actually won that tournament. Don't remind Oggy, though. Don't remind Oggy who they beat in the final, or any United fan, really. because when you see the state of this Spurs team, not just the team, but the whole club, to be fair, right now, I think if you're Atletico Madrid, even with the second leg in London, you're happy. And this is the draw you wanted if you're Atletico, not the Liverpool draw, which was the other possibility that you had for you. So you'll take it. If Soloth continues in the kind of form that he is now and the one we saw against Bruges in that second leg of the playoffs, then I've got a lot of worries, I think, coming up for Spurs.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mismatch. I mean, yes, all right, Tottenham finished, I think, fourth in the league phase, but the Atletico have got too much for Tottenham. They're just too organised, too strong, too much experience, and Spurs, they're getting players back, but even at full strength, I wouldn't take Tottenham to beat Atletico Madrid. So for me, this is the easiest tie to call, I think, in the whole of the round of 16.
Right, up next, because the winner of Atletico and Spurs, there is a decent chance we'll get an all Premier League or an all Liga tie. Newcastle against Barcelona. Two people's clubs, Mark, who are having slightly different seasons.
Yeah, I think I'm having more than a club on the Gallagher end for this in the Wall Flags mosaic. Is that what you're saying? I mean, we saw the game at St James's, didn't we? Rashford scored a couple of great goals, and that seems like a long time ago now. I mean, Newcastle, strong at home, not so great away from home. Barcelona, beatable on the counter-attack. And I think you mentioned already, Gab, the Anthony Gordon situation playing against Barca's high line. So, Newcastle have their advantage, but I just don't think they've got enough to beat Barcelona. I think certainly with the way the tie's played, its first game at St James's, I think Barcelona will be fine there. Second leg at the Camp Nou. I think Barcelona are quite comfortable in this. I mean, they've got such a great array of talent that they will really hurt Newcastle. So, yeah, this is Barcelona all the way for me.
I think if you're Eddie Howe, you can really kind of push that first leg angle. Matchups here, and I know Newcastle have had injuries, but matchups here, I think many of them, to some degree, actually possibly favor Newcastle in the sense of, we talked about Anthony Gordon on the break. On the counter, you referenced there against the high line. I'll give you set pieces, Dan Burn or Botman or Malik Chow, who I think he was suspended in the last leg, so he's going to be fit against those center backs. If they can, you can almost see a scenario where if they can get a result in the first leg, it's not going to be hopeless for them in the return at the Camp Nou. So let's move to the other half of the draw now. Atalanta against Bayern. Jules, let me start with you, because Bayern can be their own worst enemies and have been.
Yeah, but not now. I mean, we love this Atalanta team. Great comeback against Dortmund, who helped them massively, and Rami Bensebaini especially. But I think there's too much difference in talent and probably in depth as well in the squad between the two teams. And I think we all agree that this could well be Bayern's year as well, not just domestically, but in the Champions League, a bit further than last season. I agree with you in the sense that you just don't know with them, especially in second halves, especially towards the end of a game, as we saw recently against Frankfurt, where they switched off a little bit, maybe get a little bit tired because of all the intensity that they play with. But I still think they will have far too much for Atalanta, especially with the second leg in Munich.
I think Bayern have gone under the radar a bit in terms of the general watching public. I think that people are all focusing on City, on Real for PSG. But I think Bayern, I saw them at the Emirates. They lost that game at the Emirates, but I was so impressed by them for an hour. And they're dominating Germany, as we know. And Harry Kane is still scoring goals at an incredible rate. So I think that they'll be too professional for Atalanta. I think they'll look what happened to Dortmund and make sure that doesn't happen to them. And then beyond that, is it Galatasaray, Liverpool in the quarterfinals? That for me is that'd be an epic. But I think Bayern win this one.
All right, on to Galatasaray and Liverpool. Mark.
Yeah, well, I mean, the game in Istanbul, Gab, was kind of the start of Liverpool's wobble this season, wasn't it? They lost in Istanbul, and that kind of triggered a lot of things.
Performance-wise, some people might say the loss in there was actually
no, but when the results started to kind of reflect the performances, basically. And I think I do expect the game in Istanbul to be tough, but obviously, I mean, Galatasaray, as we know, they're not the best travellers, and I think we saw that in midweek when they almost threw away a 3-goal lead against Juve. So I think Liverpool will get through this because of the weakness of Galatasaray on the road. But you mentioned Victor Osimhen earlier. I think obviously he's a threat that will concern Liverpool. But listen, I think in terms of Liverpool's draw, they would be happy to avoid Atletico, as that was the other part of this pairing, to get Galatasaray. But the flip side is they're in a much harder path. Had they taken Atletico, there'd have been a much better path to the final. But now, I think if they win this tie, they face Bayern more than likely, and then you're hitting kind of PSG, Real Madrid, Man City, Chelsea in the other half. So it's a tough path for Liverpool, but I think they'll get through this tie because I just think Galatasaray away from home, I just think they'll crumble at Anfield in the second leg.
What I will say, again, Victor Osimhen against Van Dijk and Konate, who essentially played almost every minute of every game this season, for the reasons that we well know, that would fill me with some encouragement. The fact that if I were Galatasaray, the fact that Liverpool really are locked into, in sort of this battle for top five, although, with Chelsea, with United, who've now pulled ahead and are in fourth place, I think all these factors can come into play, but I tend to agree with Mark. Unless something really catastrophic happens in Istanbul, I think Liverpool will feel very good about their chances in the return leg, Jules.
Yeah, I don't see Liverpool not going through. I have to say I was not really impressed by that Galatasaray team. Both legs really against Juventus. I think the first leg Juventus really collapsed completely and helped Galatasaray to get that big win. In the second leg, we saw that Galatasaray could not even come out of their own box at times.
Against 10 men, Jules.
In the second half against 10 men. And Osimhen is great. And I get your points about facing Virgil and Konate, who've played a lot, etc., etc. But
who haven't been good this season, objectively. Like, as much as we love Virgil, especially, like,
maybe. But I think
we both agree they haven't been on the level.
They haven't been great. I think they'd be good enough to keep, this, not Osimhen might score a couple of goals or one in each leg, for example, but they would still be good enough, I think, to be solid enough to qualify.
All right, we've left the best for last, so to speak, because I think this next quartet is absolutely stacked. We're going to start with Paris Saint-Germain and Chelsea, two clubs that are just a couple hours away on the Eurostar. It's a journey we've all made pretty often. Jules, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. I think the two teams are far from their best right now for different reasons. You mentioned, I think, Rosinho just arriving. There's still some fragility defensively for sure for this Chelsea team. There's still the question mark over Cole Palmer and what you play him on the right, in the center, what you do with Enzo, etc., all of that. But we repeat this every weekend, really. For PSG, and Mark wrote about it for the website this week as well, they're far from their best. They've been all season, really. There's nothing new in what we saw against Monaco. Sometimes they are capable of great moments, great passage of plays. Others, it's not like it used to be last season when they were exceptional for January to May, really. So that might come back for PSG. Things might get better for Chelsea, but they will have to change very quickly for both teams. Really, we expect Dembele to be fit for the first leg in 2 weeks' time, which is crucial for this PSG team anyway. Fabian Ruiz should also be fit, which is also crucial for PSG. And that's very important for them. We used to have a lot of Chelsea v PSG in the 2010s, and so we haven't had any for 10 years now. So I'm glad that we'll have one of the classic back.
Mark, you saw them very, very recently. You wrote about them. What do you see wrong with Paris Saint-Germain?
I just think they're really tired. I think, like Jules said, if you bring, I know you're pulling your face, but they had such a long season last year, finished in mid-July. Then they were back within 2 or 3 weeks, the Super Cup. And I just think that the mental fatigue of having to defend all those titles is one thing, and the physical fatigue as well. But I just think, Jules mentioned Dembele and Fabian Ruiz being back for the next round, which is great. And if that happens, then they'll have 10 of the 11 players that went all the way last year. Obviously, Donnarumma is the one that will be missing for obvious reasons. He went to Man City. So you've got basically the same team, the same coach. They just look like they're worn out. They just look flat. They look like they're missing something. They're missing that kind of X factor. I don't know if they can get it back this season. I think they've got some amazing players, and I think they'll be too strong for Chelsea. Actually, I think that Chelsea for me they're just not very good, and I don't think Rossini is very good either. I just think that at some point Chelsea are going to implode, and I think this tie for PSG is a bit of a godsend because it's an easier tie than it looks like when you look at the two teams on paper. I think PSG, Chelsea, I think two heavyweights. I don't think Chelsea are heavyweight at the moment, so I think PSG win this one, but there's something missing. But who knows? They get to the quarterfinals, then they might go again, potentially Liverpool. So who knows? But there's definitely something missing. I think that PSG, Real as well. Real win the Club World Cup. Chelsea have had an up and down season. Man City have been up and down as well. Maybe we're just finding out that Club World Cup was just a tournament too far, and a lot of players are beginning to feel it now.
And finally, the next tie is probably, for me at least, just as finely balanced. Just because I find these two teams very difficult to decipher. Manchester City against Real Madrid, first leg, of course, at the Bernabeu. Jules, let's start with you.
I find it boring, man. This is the 5th year in a row where we have them playing. They've already played each other in the league phase this season. I'm tired of these games.
You want to see them
games? This is as big as it gets.
I'm tired. I know, and I will get excited as close as we get to it. And it's, Guardiola back in Spain if you want. It's like Vini and Mbappe against Haaland, or even Mbappe against Haaland. But I think that was our headline on the website last year or the year before, or and etc. etc. They know each other so well. I mean, Courtois was amazing after they beat Benfica by saying, like, don't watch the draw. We know already we're going to play Man City. It's inevitable, and he was right. So I don't know. I'm a bit bored about it.
No, I think for me, Gab, I think what it is I get Jules' point. It is repetitive, and the games are every season. But I think it's the implications for the team that loses. I mean, if any of these teams gets knocked out of the round of 16, that's a disaster. And I think we're kind of almost like watching this game to see who loses to kind of get into the fallout and as to why. So, despite the fact that Man City are pushing Arsenal for the title, they haven't been great this season, and City could end the season with nothing again. That they could win 3 or 4, but they're on a kind of a knife edge in terms of what they're going to win. And Real, I mean, if Real drop out at the round of 16, that is an absolute disaster. So, yeah, that for me is the interesting part of this, which side goes out. But I think it's impossible to call it because they're both stacked with superstar players who have been inconsistent this season. And I think if Real in the past have been able to manage Haaland better than City have been able to manage Mbappe, if that happens again, I think it's a case of which side handles the superstar better. And I think I would just give Real a bit more edge on that because I think Antonio Rudiger's got a decent record against Haaland. So I'm just going to give it 51-49 for Real.